Hello. I will present in this opportunity precipitation reconstructions based on tree rain records from the humid tropical Andes in Peru in South America. This work is a collaboration with colleagues from Peru, Chile, and Argentina, and is the result of some years of fieldwork and different funding projects. So the importance of counting on a long-term precipitation reconstruction from the tropical Andes in South America is that there is a scarce instrumental information on precipitation variations in the region. And this region is important because it plays a role in the South American monsoon dynamics, since the rainiest areas of the Amazon basin, the so-called rainfall hotspots, are located in these regions of the Andes. Linked to that, these rainfall hotspots are homes to enormous biodiversity and many endemic plant and animal species. Also, the headwaters of half of the tributary rivers of the Amazon River are in these tropical Andes. So it is important to know the precipitation variations as to know the future trends in these tributary rivers that feed the Amazon River. And finally, the rural population in the Andes depends entirely on precipitation for their familiar agriculture, the raising of domestic livestock, and the exportation and the production of exportation goods such as coffee. So this region, and this tropical Andes in Peru, is one of the main centers of production of organic coffee, which is in most cases run by local cooperatives, and of course, very dependent on precipitation. So the Andes in these regions form a topographic barrier that produces a strong gradient in precipitation with different total values at local scales, which are very dependent on local topography. So complete instrumental data and relatively good representation of rainfall over this region in Peru is available from 1979. And you can see in the third panel, there is a general decrease in the precipitation trends and is seen in almost all the instrumental data that we collected. But of course, longer records are needed to understand the precipitation variability at various scales, mainly the long term. In this sense, during several years, mostly since 2017, we've been conducting field work at different locations with our colleague Edilson Requena and other students to develop tree ring chronologies. So we produce 4 chronologies from different species of Cedrela ajuglans, mainly Cedrela nebulosa, Cedrela angustifolia, and Juglans neotropica, which develop in the Andean rainforest along an elevation gradient from the lower lands near the Amazon to the high elevation Andean rainforest at 3,000 meters above sea level. So with these tree ring chronologies, we developed the first precipitation reconstructions from the Andes in Peru. This precipitation reconstruction is an annual precipitation record from November to October and covers the last 194 years, going back from 1870 to 2010. And this precipitation reconstructions explain the 68% of the total variance in precipitation over the calibration period, which goes from 1979 to 2010. This is remarkably good within tropical reconstructions in South America. I mean, the high variance explained. These reconstructions, as you can see, present good interannual variability, and several multi-decadal periods of precipitation below and above the average. But also, it presents a steady drop in precipitation during the last years, as you can see here, which also was reflected in the instrumental precipitation series that I showed you some slides before. It's also important to know that with the reconstruction, it is possible to see and to evaluate the extreme wet and dry events along the reconstruction. So in this sense, we conducted a recurrence analysis of extreme events, and the analysis revealed that during the 19th century, from 1817 to the 1860s, there was a period of extreme dry events. But also the recurrence of these extreme dry years has been increasing during the last 3 decades, from 1980 to the present. And one very extreme event occurs every 3 to 5 years in these last decades, suggesting that there is a growing trend in this severe drought occurrence. But additionally, additional information is that the most extreme dry values along the reconstruction were found or were recorded during the 2000 to the 2010 period. So this is telling us that there is an increase in the very extreme events, and mostly during the last decades. The comparison of the reconstruction with large-scale climate-grid data show a significant and negative correlation with the tropical Pacific Ocean, the typical ENSO-like pattern, but also negative correlation was found with the tropical North Atlantic, suggesting that there is important influence from both the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans on rainfall variability over the tropical Andes of Peru. Additionally, current spectrum analysis between our reconstruction and several indices reveals, for instance, the well-documented influence of ENSO events on rainfall at interannual scales. This explains the 19% of the total variance. But also, we found a significant correlation with multi-decadal variability at about 40 years. This explains the 13% of the rainfall variability in our study region, and it was related to the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. So both oscillatory modes can explain the dry and humid periods observed in the reconstructions, and are likely associated with the negative trends in rainfall shown in the short instrumental records and the increased drought recurrence in recent decades. It's worth noting that this is the first time that we could identify the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation signal in triggering records. It is common to find these signals in longer records, for instance, in the speleotome reconstructions, but not in the dendrochronological series. So it's quite important that we found these signals to start analyzing how it's the influence of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation and also the Pacific Ocean or the ENSO oscillation in the precipitation in these areas that lacks long instrument records. Mariano Morales also developed a new precipitation reconstructions for the Altiplano of Peru with other species, with Polylepis tarapacana, and he will be presenting this work in the tomorrow on Thursday in the symposium number 8, so don't miss it. The reconstruction covers the last 400 years and also showed a steady drop in precipitation in the last decades. So both reconstruction from the Altiplano and the tropical Andes show that a very good agreement with instrumental record, as you can see in green, and also display signals of drying trends in the last decades, as you can see here. Thus, this is suggesting that a similar or analogous mechanism, dynamic mechanism of climate, are influencing the precipitation trends over the tropical Andes and the Altiplano region in Peru. So finally, a message, a take-home message is that these 3 rain reconstructions in tropical South America are allowing us to study the precipitation variations along tropical mountain environments, which have been traditionally and largely unknown, but are of capital importance to understand the South American monsoon dynamics and the precipitation trends in the last decades, and of course, in the long term. Thank you very much for your attention.